So this is part two of how to pass exams in medical school. So to quickly recap what we discussed in part one, the first piece of advice was the advice I got from a CTF, and that was that most medical students will pass their exams and become doctors, and that he found that the ones that don't were typically the ones who kind of trailed away from the curriculum and started doing their own thing rather than sticking to the set curriculum that you have in place, or the lectures, the workshops, that kind of thing. From that, I extrapolated that if you have any exams that you do, so any mock exams, look at the mean. If you are at the mean or above and you're able to maintain that, even if you're quote unquote failing the mock exam, it's not problematic as long as you're able to maintain being at the mean or above. Because if the average med student is passing and you're doing better than the average med student, it means in the actual exams you will pass. The third, that was one point together. So the second thing was around mindset. So if you aim for the stars and you land on the moon, you still went very high. If you're aiming for 100% in all of your exams and you fall short, you still will pass. So aim very high, set your standards very high. And then the 80-20 principle. So common things are common. So following the 80-20 principle of 20% of the things yield 80% of the stuff, 20% of your content will represent 80% of the exam questions. So focus on the most high yield information. Now, the extra parts that I wanted to mention were, in terms of studying for the exam, my suggestion is be exam specific. So if your exam is MCQ style, then the way I would study is by doing 1,000,001 MCQ questions. So I would do an MCQ question, go through it. If I get it wrong, I'll try and understand where I went wrong, and I'll go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And what I've found is essentially the more that you do, the higher your volume, the better you will end up doing in the exam. So if you have student A, they have an MCQ exam coming up, and student A done 1,000 questions, and student B done 100,000 questions, what would you guess? Who would have the highest score? It's obviously going to be student B because he's just had so much more practice. So we can try and use this information. That's what I've done. I think the more questions I do, the more prepared I will be for the exam. And this is specific to the exam. So if you have an MCQ style exam, that's how you revise, or that's how I revise for it. If it's an OSCE, I think, okay, what is going to come up in the OSCE? Okay, there's going to be history stations, there's going to be practical procedures, perhaps interpreting investigations, that type of thing. And there's going to be questions afterwards, typically around management. So how would I prepare for that? I would try and replicate that exact scenario. So if you have an OSCE coming up, then you can practice by doing OSCE stations with other med students. And the more that you do, the better and more fluent you become, the better you end up doing in the OSCE exam. So it's the exact same principle. So the more that you do, the higher your volume, the better that you'll do in the exam. So let's say as part of the OSCE examination, you had to do a physical exam. Let's say you had to do like, RESP exam. If you've done the RESP exam 100 times, then when the OSCE station tells you to do the RESP exam, it's going to be really easy because you've had 100 reps. But if you've only done it twice, then you're going to get nervous and you may not do as well. So especially with an OSCE, the confidence is such a big part, because the student who's done 100 reps, he's just going to be more confident because he's done it so many more times. Even if both of the students know the exam in terms of the steps the same, just because the other student has done it so many more times, in the high pressure of an OSCE, he's going to do better. So it's important to recognize that. So the higher your volume of whatever exam it is and make it specific to the exam, typically the better you'll do. Alongside that, however, you need to have a feedback system. So you can't just be pumping out lots of reps without looking at the questions that you got wrong and seeing where you went wrong and improving from there. So let's say you done MCQ questions on obstetrics and you were getting a bunch wrong. You need to look at every single question that you got wrong, figure out where you went wrong, relearn the topic, and then continue until your percentages get higher. Same thing with OSCE. You need to have active feedback. So what could work well is, and this is what I've done, 3 med students. So one person is the student in the scenario, one person is the examiner, and one person is the patient. So the examiner will give you feedback according to what the checklist says. So that way you can get feedback on where you went wrong, where you were missing marks, and then the following time that you practice, you improve, and you do that again and again and again. So you have to have a feedback system in place, or else you'll be repping lots of incorrect things again and again, which is not going to help you. The final 2 things are checklists. So obviously with the amount of content that you'll have, it can be very much overwhelming. So have a checklist so you get small wins. So if today you want to study, I don't know, psychiatry, you want to do psychiatry MCQs as part of your MCQ revision, then set an amount that you want to do, and once you complete it, tick it off. So you have a little small win, and you can do that every single day. So you have a checklist of what it is that you need to do, break it down into smaller parts, and every time you do it, tick it off, tick it off, tick it off. That way you'll actively see your progress. Because if you simply just go in blind with no plan, with no checklist, even if you're doing a lot, you may not feel like you're doing a lot, and it can be very much overwhelming. So if you have a checklist to go alongside that, then you'll be able to see what you've been able to do. And that can help you in terms of anxiety going into an exam, because you can look back at your checklist and be like, okay, I went through every single topic. I went through every single style of question that they can throw at me. I'll be fine. And that can put a lot of pressure off you. So have a checklist so you get those small wins. And the final thing is a principle that I applied this year, which is open to goal. So rather than saying, okay, I'll revise for 2 hours, 3 hours, I'll set an amount of work that I have to do. So today I need to do 3 OSCE stations. Today I need to do 300 MCQ questions on obstetrics, something like that. And then now that I have that goal, I continue working till I get it done. If I get it done in an hour, I get it done in an hour. If it takes me 6 hours, it takes me 6 hours. Regardless, that's the task I have set out. I have to get it done. And by doing that, it really set the amount of work that I can do to a higher standard. That way I was able to increase the volume. And as I mentioned earlier, by increasing the volume and getting more reps, you'll be able to improve your score. So if you found this beneficial, then please give it a like, give me a follow, share it with any friends that would find this information beneficial. And if you have any questions, drop it in the comments and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And I might make a video reply as well.